My name is Eric Fernberg. I'm the collections manager of the Dress and Insignia collections at the Canadian War Museum, and every now and then we get interesting things come to our attention. Recently, we were approached by the Stratford Festival, who sent information to us about an object that they had recently received. They weren't too sure what it was, but they said, well, we have something here that looks like a real authentic military coat and might be better in your museum. So they sent the information to us and two pictures, which were very helpful. Well, I looked at the two photographs, and my first impression was, I think we have a really good Canadian uniform here from the early 19th century. So yes, if you want to send it up our way, we'd be happy to look at it, because when looking at a uniform, photographs are helpful, but you really want to identify it. So the Stratford Festival archives sent the coat up to us, and it came here to the Dress and Insignia laboratory, and where we keep the collections. Well, I laid it out on the table and I took a look at the uniform. Well, the cloth was right, the material was right, and the buttons were right. And what I was able to determine is that this was the uniform of an officer of the 3rd Battalion, Quebec City Militia, from circa 1806 through the War of 1812 period. Well, what were some of the features that said that this is what it is? Well, the most evident was the buttons. When we were first contacted by the Stratford Festival archives, they said, boy, the buttons really look shiny. And when I looked at the buttons, they're officers' gilded buttons, which makes them, of course, nice and bright. But the information on the buttons was important. On the buttons, it had the monogram of King George III, then it said Quebec Militia and 1775. Well, the nice thing about that is the George III, we know he was the King of England at this time, 1805, 1810, 1812 period. The Quebec City, well, that told us exactly where it was coming from. And then the 1775, you'd think that's the date, but not really. The 1775 harkened back to an earlier battle when the American rebels attacked Quebec City on December 31st, 1775, and were pushed back by the British regulars and the Quebec City Militia. For their participation in that battle, the Quebec City Militia were granted the honor of that date, 1775. So I could tell by looking at the buttons that, hey, this is a Canadian unit. Just fantastic. The other feature that was really important about this coatee behind me was the black facings. Facings refer to the collar, the cuffs, and the lapels, and they were manufactured in black velvet, which was a popular color used by the militia, particularly in Great Britain, but also used in Canada. And in this case, the 3rd Battalion of the Quebec City Militia was known to wear black facings, and the black velvet was here on the coatee. So I knew that the buttons, the velvet facings on the uniform is now telling me it's from this unit. Another item that stood out to identify it as an officer's coatee was on the right shoulder. There are two hand-sewn grommets, little holes that are bound in thread, and those were used to tie on a nice gold metallic braid officer's epaulette, which would indicate his rank. So all of these features were coming together to say, nice early 19th century uniform. So when the Stratford Festival said, is this the type of artifact that would be good for the Canadian War Museum? Absolutely. We brought it into the museum, into the collections. When it got here, it was a little rough looking. You can imagine it's quite old. So we've recently had the uniform conserved, and now it'll be ready for exhibit purposes in the future.